And then I immediately pause.
No. Hello, is it working?
Yeah.
Yeah, you're good, yeah.
Excuse me, can you stay over here?
Oh, yeah.
Sorry, I didn't see the train. Because just people be coming in.
Yeah, please.
Okay.
Then we'll get started. Okay, hello and welcome everyone. And here's a committee board 3 Manhattan, January 2026 land use zoning public-private housing committee meeting. And we have our board member, public member, and presenter here, and also welcome general public to be here. And first of all, we will have Ariana to do the roll call for tonight. And please go ahead, thank you.
Ramirez, John,
We'll do it, yeah.
Ariana here, Alistair, Herman, Michelle, President Molly,
Present.
Campbell, Rod, Jaylene, Sandra, Steve.
Here.
Megan.
And just say, there's no changes to the minutes they deemed approved.
Okay, let's go start from the first agenda item is the approval for previous monthly minutes. Does anyone have comments, or if not, it's approved? No comments for the minutes, and let's go to the second item on the agenda, and we will welcome Juliana from the Funds for State of New York to present her working plan for the committee board. And yeah, I have the presentation on the screen. Sure.
No, you can either stand or if you'd like to sit here, that would be fine. And do you want to do this? Do you want Claire to do the slides? Okay, you can bring the chair here and sit here. That's fine.
Good evening, everyone. I am Juliana Palme, and I am a community planning fellow at the Fund for the City of New York for 2025-2024. And I just completed my master's in policy at the New School. I am an international student from India, and I have a background in social work, and I am going to do this project with Manhattan City 3 on policy analysis of affordable housing opportunities under the city of Yes. And when the proposal, because of my little experience in policy analysis, I chose this out of the 2 proposals that were available. So this project, as we could see from the title, is to study the implications of the recent City of Yes zoning reforms in the community district, and the focus will be on affordability, tenant protections, and community serving uses. And what I will be producing is a detailed policy report that will have recommendations for how the district can implement the City of Yes in an equitable way. So I will have more details. And the first is the main question that the community district, the office had for me was, how is the City of Yes going to affect affordability in CB3? And the history of the district and all that is something that I don't need to talk about because you already know. But what 2 recent studies in 2025 showed is that even with after a long history of rising populations, the speculative development and displacement, there is still a combination of low incomes and small households. Seniors are most vulnerable and there's a severe rent burden. And as we can see from the figures there, and so how will the city of Yes affect and kind of make affordability or an issue in the district is what the project will be studying. And what from my initial study and conversations with people is that so there are speculated impacts, which is that the as of right development will reduce opportunities for discretionary review and formal influence by the community board. And the Lower East Side might have more of small side incremental small side developments, and then Chinatown and Two Bridges may be more affected by the UAP aspect of the city of Yes. And since we are short on time, I will be going. So this is how I will do my research. So I'll be doing document analysis of everything that's available from the government documents to debates around city of Yes to census data available, housing data available, everything that will be required. And then I'll be doing site analysis through Zola and other observations on my end, and then interviews with experts. And I would need your feedback later on who the interviewers should be, and case studies as in there is no city of Yes in other parts of the world or the country, but similar policy that have affected other cities. I can look at those things, and then feedback is very important because I'll be receiving feedback from the community board and also from my cohort. And that will be a very important part. And then I will come up with policy and advocacy recommendations to answer this question is since the city of Yes is already law, we can't do much to change it right now. So the main thing is how do we minimize the negative impacts? So how can the CB3 use the city of Yes provisions to enhance or maintain affordable housing in the district? And so these are the three deliverables: a detailed policy report, a comprehensive report, maybe like 2 to 3 pages that can be circulated, and an advocacy toolkit, and a final presentation to the full board meeting. This is the timeline. I'm right now in the primary data collection the phase, and also I'll be once I have more data, I'll start doing the analysis and developing policy options. And April 9th is my final presentation to my cohort. So after that, I'll have more feedback from everyone, and I can submit this between April 10 to 15. So this is the initial mapping of stakeholders, which I don't, which I'm not so sure of, and which definitely needs a lot of work. We can go back to this one and we can talk about this in the questions. And as of now, Susan and Claire have helped me, have connected me to some to policymakers of the district council offices, 1 and 2, and I've spoken to the urban planner of District 1, and we will have a lot more interviews coming up this month. And what I have for CB3 is, am I restricted to only the contacts that the CB3 provides, or do I have the freedom to talk to other people as well? And will I have a chance to engage with community organizations in the field? And how and what tone should I write my report in, and where that be used? That's all. Thank you.
Yes, thank you, Juliana. And Now we should have our board member.
Yeah, if anyone has any comments, but also, Juliana had some questions in there, you know, about, connecting, you know, who were connect to different community organizations and that sort of thing.
Michelle.
Thanks. Joanna, have you seen our, resolution that CB3 passed? We supported City of Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, because this seems like very oriented towards, like, this is gonna be a negative thing for our community, and I don't think we know that.
Okay, I've seen that, and I've also seen that, it was, yes, additional, yes, right?
Yeah.
So, I don't intend, I didn't intend to make it very, negative like that, sorry if that came out like that. But, what I gathered from my meetings with the district manager's office is that we may have some negative impacts, so how do we avoid that? It's just to avoid as much negative impact as possible. And because there's already so much debates around City of Yes, we don't want that to happen to anyone.
Right, but, like, we supported UAP as is, for example, like, I think that, I don't know, maybe I'm reading this in a. I think we should be looking for how we can utilize, you know, City of Yes, which I didn't really see in that presentation, so I hope that that's part of it.
So, which we gave the project to her. And so it's following, I don't, did you have a chance, did you read the project that was that was assigned?
Do we get?
Okay, so, yeah, so I think it was on the, yeah, it was.
On the website here, and then send it to us.
I don't know if it was attached this time, it was before, I could certainly send it to you. So we submitted two specific projects. And Giuliani picked one, it was a match, it's kind of like residents in a hospital matching with their hospital. So the planners and the community boards match. So what she is doing is not, what she is doing, and actually Molly actually wrote the project. And has been helping her, particularly helping her along. So what she's supposed to do is not look to be either for or against, but to follow the project.
Okay, that's helpful. I just, yeah, my take from that was that like, this is gonna be something disastrous for our district and like, we need to try to mitigate that, but I think we should also be looking for ways to like
This,
use it. you know?
yeah, I think, I mean, as I remember, it's on the agenda, but it's how it will impact us, right? Or, and particularly affordable housing.
Yeah, and
So it's not for or against, it's,
right, since this City of Yes already happened, we are not going to discuss the whether we should put that up, like, approve, but we are, at this stage, we are discussing how can we use this already passed, policy to help our community? Like, what's the best way for us to take advantage of that? And also, we would like Juliana use this interview and discussion opportunity to have conversation and bring us to other politicians or those practitioners to talk with them, like for the positive part, what could attract them to come to our community to build more affordable housing as we need, and what's the barrier and how can we help them? Like for the builders or nonprofit, what stops them to come to our community, and Juliana can be the person develop this report and deliver it to the politicians or to any agencies to deliver their voice. So we can make this City of Yes new policy be a positive thing to our community. That's the goal of this report.
yeah, and just a further clarification, this is not something we're paying for. This is, something we were lucky to get. This is from the city fund for the city of New York. Every year, they have planning fellows, almost every year, we submit projects. We haven't submitted any in the last few, we haven't had ours accepted in the last few years. But I'd say over the last 20 years, we've worked with the planning fellows a lot. There's, it's a full program. So, Juliana is, it meets with, the guys at the Fund for the City of New York all the time, and leading the project expectations. They are also calling me, following up with me. And Molly, just sort of FYI, when she was a student, was a planning fellow for Fund for the City of New York, so she's really experienced in this and also working closely, as is clear in the office. So that's just sort of a clarification of the procedural aspects of this project.
If I may add, my main research question. It was, yeah, it's how can the community board use city of West Village to enhance or maintain affordable housing in the district, so. Yes, sorry for not making it clear where I'm from, I assumed that, the way the bond. Yeah, we are, I think 20 to 25 students from different, schools in the city and placed in different community boards to do what the community board, has given us to do.
I was kind of hoping that committee members would be able to help with what relevant community organizations you would be talking to and electronically introduce her. I did it for both of the council districts, and if you, I know you met with District 1, if you have trouble, please let me know whenever you have trouble, follow-up problems, because we'll work with you. Okay, Damaris, you want to take over?
Thank you, sorry for being late, looking traffic. I'm Damaris, thank you everybody for being here. So I guess we're just taking questions now.
Right, she gave her presentation and now we're taking committee questions or helpful information.
Okay.
Giuliani, thank you. That's very exciting what you're working on. I have a few answers for you and I wanted to also help see how I can be helpful for you in terms of those deliverables so that you have a sense of clarity over what the outcome is going to be. So I guess it would be helpful to go back to so this is great. It was the deliverables, I believe. Okay, so detailed policy report and then comprehensive report, like, I think it would be helpful to know what are the difference between those two, because off the bat, I really don't know. And then I think an advocacy toolkit, I wonder, is that like where recommendations are going to come in? So I think just thinking about what these things are, so we understand what they are, but I'm happy to help out with this with you too. And then if you go forward to your questions, the expectations, so that's probably the expectations, but I think in the end, what should be delivered is something that's very public facing, something that the average person in our community, any person with like a 5th grade with reading comprehension level can understand, because I think this is a really confusing thing for a lot of people to comprehend, and that's why there's a lot of different information about what is and what isn't in there. So I think really making it as public facing as possible, so that's it's useful in terms of the communication tool. And in terms of interviews, I wonder, maybe Susan or Damaris, you know this, is there any developers that she can like speak with?
Are you asking me? Okay,
I don't know
we
the,
should all just give our own, suggestions, recommendations. I don't know the answer to that right now.
okay,
But I'm sure that there are friendlier, more, I should say, community oriented.
We have one down there.
So.
I think that definitely like developers would be a great stakeholders to include, because in the end, I think like City of Venice has the 5 billion allocated, understanding like how that's going to be used. And then I think what a lot of people in the community wanna know is how is it going to make their neighborhood look and feel different. So I know there's this allocation for the, you can receive more height if 20%, if you allow, I forget, it's like the 20%. I think more clarity on what that's going to be, make the neighborhood look and feel like. And then a better sense of the AMI. But I think in the end, it should be public facing, and then if we can also talk to developers too.
Can I answer to the difference between the detail?
Sure.
What I assumed, and also I think Susan clarified, was that the detailed policy report will be like maybe 20 to 30 pages of all these very technical jargon and all that, that mean that will lead to the comprehensive report that is very public facing. And written in very simple terms for that can be circulated among community members. And I'm not so sure about the what they mean by the advocacy toolkit, but what I was like hoping for is that if there's anything that comes up in my research that would require some kind of ask from the community to the city, that they're maybe not related to changes in the city, yes, but anything that is related to affordable housing that the community can ask. And I think this will be answered better by Susan.
I was gonna say, maybe it would be helpful if you would explain your timeline. You know, when you have to have the report finished.
Yes, can you go back to? So.
Oh, there it is.
So, I'm a little different from the other fellows, because they make doing this art final project with the capstone, but since I'm already done, this is more of an independent project for me. So, but I have a final presentation to my cohort on April 9th. So after that, so I'm hoping to be submitting this to the community board between April 10th to 15th.
And you're spending, I think, 15 hours a week, is that right?
12.
12 hours, yeah. So this is 12 hours a week and has to be ready at basically at the end of April, right?
Mid-April.
Mid-April.
So on this timeline, what is number 3, developing policy options?
So, this is just a so in policy analysis, what we have been taught to do, the technical process is to come up with policy options and then rank them according to some criteria and then come up with a recommendation. But that does not have to be part of the detailed policy report, it's just for my own thing and then Apple.
So then, when you have for number 4, writing revision according to initial feedback, does that mean in March we're receiving a draft version of this?
Yes.
Okay.
Right before, around maybe a week before the full board presentation.
Okay.
Okay, so let me just who's on, let me, hold on one second. I just wanna, Steve, you're next, right? Alright, just, for the writing revision, is that when you expect that you will be actually taking our feedback yourself, or is that when you hope to collect our feedback? You can answer it in a few minutes, it's fine.
I would have to.
Okay, alright, Steve.
Yeah, all right, so I'm Steve Herrick, Cooper
Sure,
Sewer Committee.
speak around, Micah.
It's on.
Okay, all right, I'm Steve Herrick, of the Cooper Square Committee. So thanks for your presentation. We are developing right now, we're in pre-development with, part of a joint venture on the site, that will benefit somewhat from the city of Yes. We'll be able to get some additional units, so we're happy to talk to you more about our work. We've also submitted a proposal, the HPD developed another site that's on city-owned property. And actually exploring another site, so there's a couple of sites that we're looking at, and each of them will have some benefit from city gas. Yeah, I don't really have, a lot of feedback for you right now, but, you know, we can sit down and we can talk more about it. I'm wondering though, if you're gonna be looking at all at, you know, there was a rezoning that was done in this community back in 2008. And there was some projections about how much housing you might get as a result of that. And my organization did a study a decade later to see how whether this succeeded in achieving what was estimated. And we felt it had fallen short, so we're happy to share that study that we did. It may help inform some of your thinking about this one.
Yes, that would be really helpful.
I'll get in touch with you after this to schedule an interview. Thank you.
So I'll send an email connecting you two, and, Damaris, do you have, suggestions for, our local organizations she should be speaking to?
Yeah, I can, we can talk about them now, but I can also just make a list of organizations offline, anytime. And anybody who thinks of a resource that she should be looking at, please, if it's not coming to mind now, and you think about it tomorrow, please send it to me, Susan.
Yeah, I was gonna say, because I'm gonna be speaking with the fund also.
I mean, off the back, there's a lot of organizations that you can talk to that develop housing in the neighborhood that may have some, information for you that could be useful. You have Cooper Square, you have AFI, you have Two Bridges, you have People's Mutual. There's a bunch of folks and others that do a little bit more policy work. And there may be some other organizations that are not necessarily rooted in this neighborhood, but that may have valuable information about neighborhoods like ours and data that you might be able to use. So I'll circle back tomorrow with a list of some of those. For you. Okay. Do you have any other questions from committee members? No, do you have any questions from the public? I don't see any. No? Okay, yes, Kathleen, please.
Yeah, hi. Thank you, for the presentation, and I like your suggestion to, CV3 is kind of known for affordable housing developers at, Hoover Square, and, there are others. I think it would be great to get a range of information from those groups, who have done this a lot, and are your organization, Damaris. I'm not sure if this encompasses this, but in terms of talking to people, I keep wondering who's not here in CV3. I am part of an organization where we have a lot of younger people who can't find housing here anymore, a lot of whom grew up here and can't live here anymore, and so they're moving to other neighborhoods and pushing out other neighborhoods. Long-term residents.
Yeah, sorry, I just realized.
Here.
Sorry. Yeah, thanks.
You gotta start over.
In summary, thanks to Maris, yes, what she said, CV3 is renowned for its affordable housing developers, in particular, solid, long-term welcoming of affordable housing, and I think you could throw a stone and you'll hit them. Some of them are sitting here, you can easily hit them. I guess one of the things I wonder about is who's not here in CV3. What I was saying is that there's a lot of younger people in the an organization I'm a part of, where they can no longer live here, including young people who grew up here, can't live here anymore, and are now pushing out communities in other neighborhoods because they are trying to live somewhere here. So I'm wondering about if we're studying for who are we building for? Like, is this general housing? Is this senior housing, which is, we know seniors are being pushed out to the max. We know of a project that was tanked, maybe. Also, what are the competing, needs in Community Board 3 that we really do wanna know? Like, there is a site that was set up for a school. Now there's some controversy about that. I'm not sure I trust the last administration, the take on things, but, you know, we have schools with asbestos that have not been checked, so I'm just, this is a big, challenge to think about, so good luck and thank you.
Okay.
I don't think this is a little off kilter, but, I'm the president also of a resident association, and we were able to negotiate with the developer and the owner. And thankfully, we were able to help decide the affordability. And one is the ELA program for extremely low income people, and the other one is the SARA. And the building is being constructed now. The problem is speaks to what Kathleen said, when they have these lotteries and they take and select people from other areas, other states even, it narrows the ability of, lessens the ability for the New Yorkers to get the apartment, right? And even there was a lawsuit actually about the percentage of people that live in CB3 that was able to even get the apartment. So I think we could start working with that, if we could question that. Or that could be funded every. Thank you.
That's the law, you know, what she's talking about. The lawsuit. So it's set aside for, community residents. A certain amount of percentage of the affordable units are set aside. It used to be 50%, I think now it's somewhere like 25. I think. So. But this is more, I just wanna make sure that folks are clear that what we're really looking at here is. We did a study with Pratt that talks a little bit about like what are some of our needs, right? Like housing that, one of those needs that was really highlighted was the senior housing, for example. This, I think, we could look at also from the lens of our needs, but what we're also really doing is looking at the new city of Yes and how under that there may be increased opportunities for us to develop. We know that the pickings are slim, right? And so whatever we have and whatever may now be more available because of some of the language tax changes in the law, we want to really take advantage of that. And so that's why we're doing this, right? We're really looking for every opportunity. If we're gonna spend time in our district weighing in on citywide policies that are about, generating housing, then it's our responsibility in some ways to think about how that applies to this district and what we can do to maximize that housing development. Susan?
Just on that exact same thing, I think the point I kept trying to get across before also is the project is already set. What we're looking at is already set. That's how the law, the zoning that was changed, how that impacts our opportunities, because we want to take as many opportunities. And the amount she can do is also very, very set, 12 hours a week until, the draft is ready in March. If other ideas come up, we should capture them, because that could be further studies, and maybe the ideas people are thinking about because of her study, along with the results of her study, might lead to further studies, so we should definitely not lose that.
Yeah, I mean, I wanna say, just, for the committee that, we, for example, just to build on what you're saying, it is important for us to know our questions, even if it can't be looked at now. This will be the third study that we are engaging in this committee. So, you know, things have been slower, but we use our time wisely to really take a look at the landscape. You know, so this, there may be additional opportunities. And if we have resources and there are questions, then there definitely. So outside of that, if there are any other committee questions, I know you just got here, did you wanna, do you know what we're talking about? Do you have any questions?
Almost.
Welcome. So then we should move on to our next agenda item.
Yeah.
Which is a presentation from.
Idea.
Yeah, thank you. So please introduce yourself. You have a slide deck?
Yeah, it's possible
Okay.
for us to control the slides.
You want there today?
Give us 1 second.
You want her to do it or do you?
We're happy.
Did we notice, who's monitoring online? I just realized that. Did we notice, were there any questions?
I just, that's why I asked to have share screen. I don't.
Okay, there's a few never looking, so somebody has to open this up.
Yeah, so we can't do it while we're sharing screen, but when there's.
Okay.
I'm gonna ask you guys if you'll sit at this end instead because the camera's there.
Oh, sure, no problem. Susan should be.
Should we bring this mic with us or should we? She might want to first, actually.
No, not yet. Thank you. Take another one.
Thank you. So please introduce yourselves. And that's a weird place because over here we can't see. We're blocking. What? Further. That's perfection.
Yeah, just press the button when you're.
Can you guys see? Everyone else
Is that okay? Can you see? We'll swap them.
Is that screen movable?
Yes.
There we go. We resolved it all right now. Everyone see?
Good.
Tilt it back a little bit.
Slightly.
Yeah, just angle it. A little more? Yeah?
Then someone here can see that.
Feel free to move your chair so you can see it. All right, so let's commence.
Great, well, thank you everyone so much for having us. We come from the New York City Independent Budget Office. My name is Brian King. I am our Assistant Director for Housing, Environment, and Infrastructure, so that's one point that our team researches. And with me is Sarah Nicola, our lead housing policy and budget analyst. She'll be doing the bulk of this presentation. The research that we're going to discuss today is primarily hers. But I'm just going to quickly introduce who IBO is. So we are a New York City government agency. We're funded by the city budget. However, we are non-mayoral and we're nonpartisan. We are not under any elected official. We were created in the 90s in a charter revision. I think it's 1989. And we were specifically created to have a protected budget and basically an independent ability to research the city's budget, policies, and economy. And largely what we do is we publish our research for anyone to read. You know, city council members, advocates, lobbyists, but then of course, just everyday members of the public, community board we work with quite often. And so beyond just publishing papers, we do a lot of educational outreach and presentation activities, which is some of the work that we do includes we come up with our own estimates of the city's revenues and expenses in response to each of the mayor's 3 financial plans throughout the year. So there's one in November, there's one in February, and then there will be another in May. And we respond to each of them with borrow estimates that kind of remove the politics from the equation of those budgets. And then we also do more topic specific research, which is what we're discussing today. It's a report that we published November 2024. Yeah. Yeah, so generally we are here to help New Yorkers understand the city budget and government. And the last thing I just want to clarify is that IBO, like really all policies, is neither for nor against City of Yes. We just conduct research and try to help the public understand the implications of various policies, budget decisions. So with that, I'm handing off to my colleague.
Thanks again for having us and inviting us to talk on this really interesting topic. My name's Sarah. And the agenda for tonight, and do a quick overview of City of Yes zoning changes. I will talk about our report, that was published like briefly before City of Yes was passed. It's called Inclusionary Housing and City Subsidies. And looks at, the different ways that these policies have worked in the past and what it might mean for City of Yes. Particularly the Universal Affordability Preference, or UAP. I'll talk through a few additional City of Yes modifications that City Council made, as City of Yes was negotiated in the past that have to do with affordability. I'll briefly touch on 45X, the tax incentive, and how that might affect, City of Yes's abilities to promote affordable housing. And then also touch on some additional, funding for affordable housing that was passed alongside City of Yes. Alright, so. Just a refresher on what was passed with City of Yes, it was passed in December 2024. Most of the changes were focused on easing zoning restrictions to promote new construction of all types of housing. A little more housing underneath, but was really the tagline. And it was kind of a multi-pronged approach to tackling that. So in like low density areas of the city, one of the interventions was allowing accessory dwelling units. In medium density parts of the city, the town center zoning and transit development, parts of the proposal. Revise the zoning codes to make it easier to build housing, near transit and in like, historically more commercial areas. And then high density areas, which is most relevant here in CB3, is the Universal Affordability Preference, UAP, which is a new, type of inclusionary housing program that the Adams administration proposed in past City of Yes. And then citywide, of course, was limiting parking requirements for new housing construction. So overall, these interventions, the DCP from city planning estimates that these will lead to 80,000 new units over 15 years. And again, this is all types of housing, not just income restricted affordable housing. UAP is the only piece of these interventions that focus on income restricted affordable housing or not concerned at all. So that's the focus of the report that I'm going to talk about, and just given the interest in how City of Yes would promote affordability for affordable housing. That's our focus today. So to start, the report is called Inclusionary Housing and City Subsidies. So we took a look back at the past 3 mayors, Bloomberg, de Blasio, and Adams. Look through their housing plans and see what methods that they were going to use to tackle the affordability crisis and promote new affordable housing construction. We see 2 kind of full approaches that they use repeatedly. So one is direct city subsidies. That's like low-cost loans or grants that the city gives to developers in exchange for affordability. So a couple of these have already come up tonight. So like the extremely low and low income affordability program that targets like the deepest affordability levels in the city, or like the senior affordable rental apartments, Sarah. Those are both examples of direct city subsidies and how the city uses those to create affordable housing. And then there's also inclusionary housing, which UAP is an example. It basically lets developers go higher than the zoning allowance in exchange for some share of affordable units. So part of this is like they're often talked about as separate tools, but one thing we explored in this report is that they're often used together and overlap to create more housing. I'll talk a little bit more about that. So with this paper, we looked back at how these different methods created new affordable housing and how affordable it was. So our goals in doing this were to understand the outcomes of these 2 approaches in recent years. We look back to 2010. And then to discuss implications for City of Yes and especially UAP and its potential to promote affordable housing construction. Thing to note is HPD is the main city agency responsible for administering these programs. And also in our report, we only look at new construction and not preservation, although that's another important piece of affordable housing. So to go a little more in depth on inclusionary housing programs, it's also known as a density bonus. This allows developers to go higher than otherwise allowed by the zoning in exchange for some affordable units. So it's important to note that this has some required affordability, but overall it promotes the development of a mix of market rate and affordable units usually. Often it's kind of an opt-in program for developers, so they decide if they want to use it or not, whether to include those affordable units. The reason they would opt in is because that incentive is valuable. But how valuable it is depends on market rents in an area. Because the density bonus allows you to build more units, which kind of gives your project more rental income. But it's kind of weighted by required affordability, which is less rental income. So the higher the market rents are in your project, the more valuable the density bonus is gonna be, the more likely you will use it. So there's 3 existing programs that operate in this kind of way in New York City. One is voluntary inclusionary housing that's been around since the 80s. And that's an opt-in program that developers use. More recently, there's mandatory inclusionary housing introduced by de Blasio. And that operated similarly, but rezoned specific neighborhoods to require developers to add affordable units. And finally, the new UAP, that has the 20% height bonus, essentially, that developers can use, but those units have to be affordable. And so UAP is really similar to voluntary inclusionary housing, and how it works, but one important difference is that it requires deeper affordability. So UAP units have to be 60% EMI, averaging to that affordability level, whereas VIH, the required affordability is 8%. So it's kind of a greater trade-off that developers are thinking about in moving to UAP. Next, we mapped out where these different programs apply. We have VIH in the orange, MIH in red, and the new UAP areas in blue. So overall, it's expanding this type of bonus to way more of the city, and notably a lot of low rent areas where the incentive to opt in might not be as strong. I guess thinking about how this applies to CB3, that is adding a lot of new area that would be eligible for a density bonus. So returning to our research question of how these different programs have been used since 2010, we looked at how the city spent its money on subsidies, and specifically, so we have the y-axis is the dollars, and then looked at how it was applied to voluntary inclusionary housing projects, mandatory inclusionary housing projects, and projects with no density bonus. We think that is really common for projects receiving city subsidies to also use density bonuses. From 2017 to 2022, the majority of city subsidies went to projects that were also using density bonuses. This was as high as 79% in 2022. So overall, we see a really clear connection between inclusionary housing and city subsidies, and there's really a lot of overlap between these 2 different strategies for affordable housing.
One quick question, Erin. This is capital dollars, right? Not operating dollars?
Right. Okay. Next, we looked at how the specific programs were used without subsidies. So, well, in particular, we're looking at the affordability levels of the units produced by all these different methods. So on the y-axis of each chart is the number of units. And then across use, on the top left, we have VIH projects with subsidy, on the bottom without subsidy, and then same thing on the right, MIH with subsidy on the top and then without subsidy on the bottom. The main takeaway here is that, projects that use subsidy are much more affordable. Sorry, and one other thing is that these are all on the same scale, so that you can compare them across. The different charts. So. Thinking about how the city can promote deeper affordability. You see that on the top two charts. The ones that use subsidy. Those produce a lot more units that are extremely low income and very low income versus on the bottom. There are a lot less, so on the top, 50% of all those units produced through these two different programs with subsidy were affordable at the deeply affordable levels. Versus only 30% if the product did use subsidy. One more thing, if this was, I apologize, the MIH chart starts up 2017 because that one program was introduced. So just be clear about that.
Could you repeat that? You said 30% with the subsidy, but without the subsidy and 1%.
So it's 50% of the projects with subsidy were affordable at extremely low, very low income levels versus 30% of the projects without subsidy. So the big takeaway here is that without subsidy, including housing programs produce few deeply affordable units. So what does this mean for UAP? Our main takeaways first is that although these are often thought of as separate tools, inclusionary housing and direct subsidies are often used together to achieve either more units or deeper affordability in affordable housing projects. We found that inclusionary housing alone has produced few deeply affordable units. And given these findings, we think that UAP will likely require expanded funding for direct subsidies in order to reach the deeper affordability levels it requires and lower rent areas where it's now applying. And as of now, there's no data yet on the UAP update. I think it became active, the program started taking applications last year. Excuse me. So we haven't been able to see yet if developers are interested or not, but definitely something of interest going forward. So overall, we think UAP might not be doing the heavy lifting on producing deeply affordable units going forward, but it's another tool in the toolbox, so to speak, to make projects pencil out and make them more feasible. Okay. Just to touch on a few modifications that were made once the Davis was past that concern affordability. One thing council negotiated for was more affordability on big UAP projects. So they got it put in that 20% of units at 40% AMI would be required for projects over 10,000 square feet. So for other projects, it would be 60% AMI. So this is reaching for affordability levels. They also negotiated for affordability requirements in town center and transit-oriented development zoning areas. So that actually covers more of the city. In addition to where we saw UAP was being expanded. But similarly, in certain projects, they'll now be required to have some affordable units. So some of the takeaways that we covered will also apply in those kind of projects. Quickly touch on 45X because that overlaps with all of this. It's the new tax incentive for new housing construction that was placed post A in April 2024. Some of the interventions in CDFS were kind of designed with 45X in mind, thinking of developers will be using a tax incentive already. So the city kind of expects that new housing created through these new programs, UAP, town center zoning, COD. Are likely to use 45X, and that requires some affordable units already. One thing to note is that affordable units that are required by 45X can also count toward the requirements of UAP or town center zoning, etc. So that's something to consider when thinking about developer incentives, is that those units can count for both incentives. So as of now, it's unclear how each of these policies might drive new development, whether there will be a bigger incentive to both, to do one, something. Anyway. There was additional funding passed for City of Yes, with the council negotiations, there was $5 billion in new funding for housing infrastructure, council called it City for All, their priorities in passing City of Yes. The relevant things here, it included $2 billion in capital funding for affordable housing, which included $1 billion from the state and $1 billion from the city. That covers all different types of new housing. So like affordable homeownership, new construction, preservation, senior and supportive housing, really kind of all different housing programs that the city now has a little more funding for. There was also some operating funding added to the budget as a result of the negotiations. So one was $215 million for city tax vouchers, which can help promote affordability, and also $7.6 million annually going forward for the anti-harassment and tenant protection program. One thing to note with the capital funding is it's not really clear how that will be distributed geographically across the city, if it'll be targeted toward areas that are more affected by City of Yes. That is still kind of being decided. So thank you again for the opportunity to present. Happy to take any questions. And if you're interested in digging more into inclusionary housing, please refer to the federal.
Okay, thank you. Just one quick question and then we're gonna pass it.
Could you take down the share screen?
The funding allocation for the city, the $5 billion, which you just sort of laid out, that was a one-time allocation at the passage, right? Of City of Yes. The additional resources, the incentives for construction and anti-harassment program, that's not gonna be an annual allocation, is it?
It's kind of different for each thing they promised. So the mayor's office actually has a really great webpage that lays out all the details of the commitments they made. So there's a link in the slide, it's on the share as well. But so the anti-harassment and tenant protection program, that is one that they baselined and like help on annually going forward. Other things are like, oh, we'll put this many capital dollars over the next 4 fiscal years. So it really kind of varies by. Okay, back to the.
All right, so we're gonna take questions first from the committee members. If we have any questions, anybody?
So of the $5 billion,
Here's it, like,
well, of the $5 billion that you showed on that page, $2 billion is capital funding, the rest is what are the.
Yeah, there was also $2 billion in capital funding for DEP, so for infrastructure investments related to increased housing density, and then the rest, I think, which would have been operating money.
Any other questions? You have a question?
Sure.
Simon, just fill out, you can fill out the speaker form after,
Okay.
just so for time's sake. You can take it with, you can take it. Take it
I'll
with
take
you.
it with me. I'm sorry.
And then you can have your question now. No. That's the wrong form. You just.
I'll get it.
Hey. Hello, what portion, if any of this funding is at risk, given recent headlines about New York City's budget shortfall?
That's a difference. How do you answer that?
I mean, is it,
Yeah.
they did already, do they have a fund that this is, or is it subject to appropriation, or I have no idea, it's not.
Well, I would say most of the funding has already been added to the budget and it's from state, city and state sources, so I can at least say there's not like federal funding issues with that, I don't know if you,
Yeah. I guess I'd say, if, the administration decides that they need to make various funding cuts, you know, they don't have enough funding for everything that they want to achieve, it'll be a policy decision on their part, what they cut things from. I think in this case, like, this funding was announced with the passage of City of Yes, but I don't think like anything necessarily protects it beyond like other funding.
Okay.
That's my understanding. Yeah.
Okay, thank you, good question.
Just fill out the form. when
Yeah,
when you're
yeah,
done.
sorry to not do.
Any other questions? Public? No?
No, there's no.
Huh?
No one from the public has their hand.
And you go continue with it. Do you have any questions?
I can always ask a question, but I hope that, thank you. We, as one of our budget priorities every year, try to get more city funding, into affordable housing. I think the program we specifically asked for is called Ella, is that?
Yeah.
Ella. Do you have any ideas on how you can even get the city to consider more funding? You know, to put more funding into affordable housing? Or do you look at, do you know how much HPD has allocated for the coming year on this?
yeah, well, we can make recommendations on like, where the city should add funding or how, I suppose, but, those are definitely numbers we could get for you. I don't know off the top of my head, like how much money is for Ella, but I can say, that was definitely one of the programs that, they added funding to through the $2 billion capital investment as part of the negotiations, so. That, I think that is a priority housing program for the city.
The other thing I'll say, correct me if I get it wrong, Sarah, is, HPD in their capital budget will have like a few broad buckets and Ella may be one of those, or NDE is one of those where they start the year with a certain amount of funding. Throughout the year, as people at HPD negotiate with developers, basically to figure out the amount of city subsidy that we were showing up as a petition, they will shift money around as needed for the programs that basically work for the different developers that come to HPD. Like, they've described it to us as largely those developers will go. The developers go to HPD, the other way around, more and more often than not, at least. So things are not fixed. HPD capital budget moves quite a bit. It's something that we're actually looking into trying to put together like some helpful resources to help people understand that more. It's a complex thing that matters a lot.
Just one more follow-up. As you said, it's really very early to see how this is impacting, particularly our community board. Will you be doing any follow-up, or could we ask you in a year to do a follow-up? Is this something you're gonna be watching?
Yeah, we take requests for research, so, if that's something you're interested in, definitely feel free to reach out. And yeah, we're very interested in seeing what the data is gonna show.
Just, I have a question, so in terms of forward thinking projections, we don't have any data at the moment to look at so that we can understand what the impact is. But, did you all in your analysis look at or create any projection? Or, you know, how many units do you think that the UAP program could potentially bring to our community, given our, you know, our current zoning, the application of MIH, and also sort of, you know, what is available, to develop? Did you look at any data of that kind?
We did not, we didn't do any projections for this report, and it's a really tough question to answer just because there's so many moving parts and you can never really totally understand the developer's incentives, but, yeah, 80,000 units was the total number that the city put out over 15 years, so we can at least say UAP will probably be like a fraction.
Okay.
It was very interesting. I have a question about, the 5 billion and how you can ensure that those units that are being built are affordable, because after the 2 billion capital funding, when it comes to the operations, like, is there an expiration on that funding that was allocated? It's like, if, I don't know, is there like a time horizon on that? And then after that, how will those units remain affordable?
Question. I think it would depend on the HPD program that is receiving the capital funding. So I'm not sure off the top of my head what the term lengths are for their affordability requirements. There are some programs that require affordability, so, I don't wanna say anything incorrect. But there, yeah, that would definitely be a factor in some of the programs receiving capital funding. And also for projects receiving 45X, and I believe for UAP.
So those are, in perpetuity permanent?
Yeah.
Okay.
But yeah, the HPD term sheets that they put out for their different subsidy programs would define how long it has to be affordable, what the affordability levels are.
I guess among those other programs, how many of them?
What percentage of those programs are permanently affordable?
I'm not sure if it's not right.
Okay.
It's a good question.
I'd be curious.
We could follow.
Any other questions? I have another, final question. So, given the allocation of 5 billion, you know, the city of Yes, and sort of the premise behind it in a lot of ways was to look at how to make sure that development and housing affordability expand across the city. So would you all look at the commitments from the city for the 5 billion and how those resources may be applied or allocated to different communities? Because, you know, it's all even until somebody gets a larger share of the funding, and then, you know, other neighborhoods are left out or.
That's kind of something we're looking at right now, but, there are, just in the way it appears in the budget, there's kind of limitations on what you can see and what you can know about where money's going in HPD's budget, so without further research, like, yeah, it's hard to know how that money is going to appear, because of those decisions kind of, it's stuff that HPD.
Well, as you're looking at it, can you also, since you are looking at it, can you, see whether or not there's, you know, a way to, or how as communities, we're able to get ahead of it and see, you know, where there's over investment of these resources, and in other communities, a lack of investment. Because I think depending on the neighborhood, what might seem easier to facilitate, where there might be developers that might be more interested, or where there may be more opportunities, where we will see, you know, an uneven application of these resources.
That's really a good question.
Thank you to as well. Yeah, I'd say like initially it's really hard, and it's probably impossible for us to see in the budget where money's being planned. What we can see, and it's very manual to do this, is like when a specific project has received capital funding, sometimes like a project code will be added to the capital budget with like the name of the developer or
They
the
don't do
address.
that for housing,
Oh, it's not for housing.
no,
Which,
which, yeah, is like one of the limitations of trying to figure out like where this housing funding is going. For other capital projects, they put the specific project, but possibly do that.
Well, it strikes me as odd, given the premise for, wanting to make sure that, every neighborhood had its fair share, that we still don't have a mechanism in place that can tell us how resources are being applied and what kind of incentives are being made available. And I would encourage your office, as you think about and further research opportunities to see the application of these policies and how they're impacting our communities, to look at such issues, because I think it'll, at some point, maybe not now, but I think there would be a story to see. So anyone else have their hands up?
Yeah, okay. Well, I was gonna say that there is a report of the city council, districts where, how much money has basically gone into and how many housing units have been developed in every city council district. And that was part of like, one of the ballot initiatives was that the districts that had the 10 council districts that had to lease housing units will now, basically, as council members will no longer really be able to veto or approve projects in their district.
Right.
So we do know that, certain districts in the Bronx have had, a default of the new low-income housing has been developed, and we can assume that a lot of it could be heavily subsidized. Whereas in a lot of more affluent communities where development, we can do market
Are you
rate.
speaking to me?
I'm just saying in general, like, that there's 75, 20, you do 75, 25 projects, where you've got 75% market rate and the rest is, they're relying on tax exemption, et cetera.
Mhm.
So they're not getting, there's not much subsidy going into those projects.
Anybody else? Any questions? All right, well, if we don't have any other questions, then we're gonna conclude this portion of the meeting. I'm going to adjourn. And no, we still have another topic to discuss, or two topics briefly to discuss. Thank you for coming and for answering our question. And please share screen. We appreciate knowing that you are constantly looking for things to research. Thank you. All right, so we're supposed to be talking about, I'm gonna ask for everybody to mention real quick so that we can be like, yeah, we can get out of here early, right? So the two issues that are left, the one is to discuss, planning for term limits. And then the other, which is a really not an issue that we're gonna discuss, but I wanted to mention. We were supposed to also have on our agenda this month, the Essex Street market and a presentation and discussion with Tim. But we did not do that, and instead, what is happening is that Tim is researching all of the resolutions that are related to the Essex market and to the recommendations that we've made as a community, so that we can have those to support, our position when we write to EDC about this issue, so that we can make sure that we have everything we need to make the ballot. Okay, and so that he will come next month to further that discussion with us and share those findings, okay?
Have you heard anything that the administration, like the new administration mentioned that in the changes, is that why we're doing this, or just we're trying to look at that, we see that we started?
I think, so yes, I think we're trying to continue the advocacy. This is more about the public programming piece too.
Oh, okay.
At the Essex market, and the fact that that contract is ending, and there's management procedures around the market itself, and they came last month and made a presentation about that. And Tim also made a presentation about the wonderful programming that they're doing over there, and how they want to continue to do that. So I think that most of what he's gathering is, resolutions that speak to what we wanted to see happening there, and probably like how that really lines up with what they're doing and what we're supporting. So that when we write our letter to them, that, we can show that we're not deviating from what the original intentions.
So it's about the program, not about.
Yeah, mostly, because the Burlington is, that's sort of done in a way,
Is that, we know that?
Well, I mean, we've been told that, but I mean, have we heard anything else about Burlington?
No, I think last time we spoke, it was a done deal unless Burlington pulled out.
Right.
But it will be on the agenda. Well,
It
the
was
market
deal
will
with
be on the agenda.
contract negotiation, because didn't EBC decide that like they didn't need to actually vote to change the contract, that was my understanding that the board.
Yeah, I believe so. Then, so, like I said, it was a done deal unless Burlington, pulled out.
Their negotiations.
Yeah, they've signed papers.
But it's gonna be our next month's agenda.
The market will be, yes, the market will be,
itself.
and I'm sure Tim can give an update on that.
Yeah.
So, can I talk about this? So, all of the committees have been talking about planning for term limits. It's been discussed in this committee. And what's basically been discussed is capturing procedures or capturing information. To have it documented for when you guys aren't here with your institutional knowledge and expertise. So what we've done is our website, under resources, at the very bottom of the page, you can see we now have a folder for each committee. And Claire, could you click on Health and Human Services? They're the only ones that have started populating. So you will see, they so far have a timeline, and they've talked about how agenda items get on the agenda, but they really focus that on their committee. And, can we click on the timeline? So this timeline, May created this timeline, and it basically is budget priority. So every committee actually can use this same timeline, but you should be adding to it for things for your committee.
Okay.
Can we go to the bottom? And you'll see, like for their committee, once a year they have a panel. And they don't have a specific date for the panel, but you can see they have decided it takes 4 months, and they put the agenda for each of those months on. So I just wanted you to see where your information's going, and you really should be, I would suggest, what can you add to the timeline besides budget priorities? And what procedures, documentation, information do you want to capture for your committee?
Yeah. So just to recap, right? What we wanna do is look at our year, and in that calendar year, the activities and procedures that we typically go through at different points in time throughout the year. So sort of seek to create for a schedule, with calendar work plan for each committee. That is,
And you may or may not have anything, to be honest, you may or may not have anything to add to the timeline besides budget priorities. Because each committee, of course, is unique, and you have ULURPs, like you have a couple of ULURPs coming up. That's never something you can schedule.
That's right.
But one thing you might want to capture is that outside the ULURP procedure, this board likes to have a pre-ULURP presentation, so you're not learning everything, you're voting exactly at the same month. So that would be more like the panel thing for ULURP staff or pre-certification. You may or may not have anything to add, but you should have what's on this budget timeline. And I think you certainly should have, even on ULURP procedures, we should use it, with the office can work with you on that. But what else do you want to, create procedures?
so that's my next question, so this is just general operation of the committee, but we can also create, a resource or a template document for, how we handle ULURPs, right? Or if there is an NIH,
On the agenda, click on the other thing for it.
or should we also think about like our procedures for how, I mean, I know that you mostly inform us because it's largely dictated by the rules when developers are applying. But like, when there's an inclusionary housing and other sort of programs that dictate that they come to the committee for, a presentation, or a resolution, or should we also be looking at those and sort of laying out how that works?
Maybe
Marla, you know, on
But I-
our side?
what I'm kind of taking away from this is what land use actions are required to come to committee? What land use items are required to just notify committee? Because sometimes we often, and this happened recently, I don't know what it was, I think it was last month, or the month before, we were notified of something, and I went back to the developer and said, can you come present? And he said, we're not required to, we're only required to notify. And I said, yes, that's correct, but would you come present so our board knows what's happening? And they said, yes, they almost always will say yes. So you might want to capture like who's required, who's not required, but you can request that kind of thing. You know, I think that's a good idea. And what?
And,
There's a hand up, who is that? Whose hand is up?
Herman
Hewitt.
Hewitt.
Do you want to call him Herman?
Herman, you see that you have your hand up, do you still have a question?
Oh, I'm sorry, you have to allow him, allow
Hold
him.
on one second.
You have to allow him to talk.
Right, let him talk.
What?
He has to unmute.
Well, did you allow him to talk though?
All right, so you have to unmute
There you go.
yourself now.
Okay.
Herman.
He should be able
I
to,
think you're there, yeah, can you hear us? Can't hear him.
I'm gonna promote him.
1 second.
Yeah, okay, he's coming as a panelist, so you should see him.
Okay.
Um,
Thank you.
there you go.
Go ahead, Herman. Herman, did you want to speak? Okay, if you're trying to speak to us, we can't hear you. And the volume is up. He's not on mute either, right?
No, I wasn't trying to speak. No.
Okay.
We'll put your hand down.
We're gonna put your hand down again then, since you're not trying to speak. All right, I got excited. We were getting questions from him.
Oh, his hand, he put his hand down.
Isn't it exciting then? All right, but stop, but Sandra has a question, so.
First of all, I don't see, a clear subcommittee,
What?
subcommittee are not.
We didn't put on any subcommittees because we just started this, but we're very happy, we intend to and we're happy to.
Okay, because, and so that, my question, you know, land parcels are very specialized. So,
But you probably don't want to be talking about landmarks and land use, right? But we can certainly talk
I'm
about
just
it.
asking about committee
Yeah,
in
well,
general.
this
You
is,
didn't have a subcommittee, that's all I want.
you're absolutely right, and they come next. We just wanted to, as you can see, we have one committee that has documents. And I wanted to speak to everyone, but you're absolutely in your committee because it's so technical. I
Okay.
assume you had lots of documents.
Okay, oh.
All right, any other questions? Anybody else? Okay, no, so I think that's.
Yeah, I'm gonna say, we have talked about this several times, and we've not come up with anything specific.
So I do actually have something to follow up, I'm sorry. What is our timeline as a community board and as committees to get this done?
We have within the next year.
Okay.
So term limits start, 1 year from now. But I will say, I think some of the things you're gonna wanna do is gonna take time. Like the ones we mentioned, I think there'll be some research there, so it will take time.
Great. Thank you, Susan, as always. And thank you, everybody else, for attending tonight's meeting. I know it's freezing cold outside. I can't believe so many people are here. I did want to say, happy new year to everyone. I'm looking forward to, really exciting, 2026 is a lot of challenges and different opportunities I hope. And we'll take this year to, dig deep and learn as much as we can about the changing landscape of housing in this neighborhood, and it's always, been important to us. Thank you all the committee members for being here and everybody from the public, and I think we need to do a closing roll call and then adjourn it. So, motion to the roll call.
I got it.
You got
Damaris,
it. Here.
John, Ariadna here, Alistair, Herman, Michelle, Molly, here, Campbell,
Here.
Rod, here, Jamie, Sandra.
Yes.
Steve.
Here.
Nathan.
Done?